the show. Today's panelist is Shamaria Smallis. She's the Chief of Staff at Collection Agency Kane & Weiner, and my apologies for mutilating your name. We also have Scott Taylor with us, who's Director of Product Development at Fiserv. And then not last but not least, Hal Schaefer, who's President of D&H Credit Services and a longtime credit practitioner and consultant. I'm Dave Schmidt, and I'm your moderator, as I mentioned before. We'll be discussing today the strategies to attract the right talent and then develop a roadmap for using that talent and developing it for long-term success. And we've organized this panel discussion into three sections. The first is recruiting, then we'll get on to the interviewing process, and then we'll talk about developing talent. So let's start with the first polling question. And in this question, we're just trying to get an idea of your hiring outlook. Are you seeking candidates now? Or are you expecting to begin hiring Q3 or Q4? You don't need staff till next year, or you have no hiring plans. So I see the results coming in, and we'll give you a few moments to continue doing that before sharing the results. Okay, very interesting. Still coming in. Let's try to finish this up in the next few seconds here. And I think we're good to go. So the poll is closed, and the results will be shared here. So let's actually stay on the question. So what we have is 31% either actively seeking candidates now or having no hiring plans. And then the others, another 39% there, split between the two categories, are deferring hiring to either the second half of this year or until next year. So that's interesting. So obviously there's a current need, a long-term need, and some of you are on here even though you have no hiring plans, but things happen, as we all know. So Shamaria, what are your clients telling you about the hiring outlook?
Yes, thanks, Dave, and welcome everyone for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here. The clients that we've been speaking with, it's been really strong, positive outlook. I'm surprised at the poll with it saying 31% of no hiring plans right now. Some of that is probably a smart decision in the fact that there's not a lot of talent out there. It's really difficult to be able to attract talent because so many people that were impacted by COVID and at the start of the pandemic, they were laid off. They're collecting unemployment. There's the supplemental unemployment that is impacting many people to want to stay at home. So the ones that I've spoken with and us at Kane & Weiner, we're actively hiring and have been for several months. So it's interesting to see that some don't have any hiring plans, but when we look at it, that those that are expecting in Q3, Q4, I'm not surprised that they're sort of pushing it because there's a big rush right now of people bringing talent back into the workplace.
Okay, Scott or Hal, do you have anything to add to that?
We do something a little different. Our company works with our clients to find them an appropriate person to run their credit department and things like that. And right now we do have a client who's in a very slightly niche area that we're looking at working with them on trying to get them the appropriate credit manager. And believe it or not, it'll be their first time credit manager. And that person probably would be third quarter or possibly fourth quarter before that comes into play.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on to the little graphic here that we've put up. And that's telling us why do new hires fail. And this is interesting in that, one of the things we look for with new hires is technical competence. We want the person that's right for the job, but that's the least likely reason for them to fail. Obviously, these other things, coachability, emotional intelligence, motivation, and temperament come into play, and they're determining how good the employee is going to be, whether you're going to keep them. So, so there's a mistake. We need to be careful in terms of just focusing on hard skills when we're looking to hire somebody. How, since you were just talking about looking for hires for companies, why don't you jump into this and give us your take?
One thing that I've found is that when you're interviewing candidates, you want to take and make sure that they're truly qualified for the job. I've run into a number of candidates, potential candidates, shall we say, that have overstated their qualifications. And after asking some of the right questions and probing a little bit, you'll find out that they really weren't as qualified as they may thought they were. The other side of the coin is that the ability to handle stress. I mean, with COVID-19 and everything going on, it has really ramped up that level. And so that's the two factors. You got to make sure that the people can not only that they're truly qualified for the job, but also that they can handle, being under the gun to take and make sure that they can accomplish what they need to accomplish.
Okay, thanks, Hal. Scott, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's coachability. I think and collaboration is super key as far as kind of what I key in on, because you have to make sure that someone can kind of get along well with others and is coachable. I mean, they may not know SQL or a certain programming language. However, as long as they're coachable and they're willing to learn, I think that says a lot for a candidate. And like I said, it's just so important, especially in the virtual world and when we go back to the offices, just to work collaboratively with other people is so critical.
Yeah, thank you. So as we continue in this section on recruiting, let's talk about a few things. Obviously, there's a couple factors that come into play in terms of who we should hire, and we're looking for different things. And so there's the idea of experience versus education, and I should go back and state, so for the purposes of this discussion, we're talking about hiring entry-level and mid-level credit department talent. We're not talking about hiring the top person in the department. So this is focused at credit managers that may have to be involved in hiring. So, do you look for experience or education? Do you look for behavioral traits or skills? And, all sorts of things come into play with that. College degree or not, business degree or other degree, highly skilled or versus able to learn, which Scott just talked about a little bit, generalist or specialist. So Shamaria, I'm going to throw that over to you to start talking about the experience versus education part of it.
I think depending on the position, obviously we talked about that we're doing entry level, right? Entry level, I'm not so concerned about the education. Now, when you start to think of career pathing for individuals, you certainly want a mixed pool of candidates that have experience versus education. But I'm not one in looking back at who are successful hires. They all haven't been educated. Many of the individuals, whether they're in the collections industry, may not have a education background. The main thing that we're looking for is kind of what's their prior experience, because are they trainable? Do they have the initiative? And again, you want to make sure that they're hungry to make money, right? So entry level, there's going to be a certain amount that we're going to pay, and the rest is on commission based. So you really want that drive and initiative is what we look for. So I like to look at some of their positions. What have they done? How long have they worked there? That's the core of what we look for in talent.
Okay, interesting. Let me go to Scott on this. So what about the issue of the type of degree? You know, it's where it's credit, it's business. You know, do we need a business degree, or do we want to mix, bring in people with from other areas? What do you look for there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in my past experience of hiring, you know, for credit functions, to me, the degree or not, or specialized degree, you know, is not necessarily like a deciding factor as much as, you know, as Shamaria said, it can kind of limit their kind of career path. So, I mean, like for me, when I first got into the credit industry, I was a high school graduate, you know, however, over time, I went back to school and got my degrees. However, you know, I also was just super hungry to learn, make money, and, you know, eventually kind of go and work at other parts of the business. So I think from that perspective, I don't like to kind of pigeonhole people into like you have to have a degree especially for entry level jobs. It's you know, you can come in and kind of prove yourself through your deliverability of results.
Okay, thank you. And Hal, so let's move over to the character of the person, the behavioral traits versus skills side of things. You know, there's some certain personas that you're looking for when you're doing these searches for your clients in terms of finding credit personnel? You know, individual work habits versus team habits, attitude, talent, you know, all the different factors that come into there.
Well, one thing that even beyond even all of that, I mean, certainly I'd want a team player and somebody who's, if they're going to be doing collections, that certainly they should be a little bit more extrovert than introvert. But one other area that I like to look at as far as experience versus education is if depending on the industry of the company itself that is hiring, you want to find someone who has the right background. Say, for instance, if the company has to be in the construction industry, you want to see that they have a little background in that industry, because it will help make the transition smoother going from their previous company to the current company. Being able to handle situations such as payment bonds or liens, etc. Different industries have little idiosyncrasies, and if you can hire someone who has had previous experience, hands-on experience in that part of the industry, it will help pay off in dividends by hiring the right person.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on. We know that we've all been impacted by the remote working environment, and so I guess let's talk about that in terms of recruiting. Shamaria?
You know, our recruiting in this remote work environment has been so challenging, and we have had to pivot. We've had to be so fluid in our approach because it's changing, right? So recruiting, you know, previously, you know, we used to be face-to-face with people. You used to have job fairs, and in light of COVID, we've had to revamp that. So we've had virtual job fairs. We've had most of our exchange has been via email or text messaging with recruiting, and then scheduling Zoom interviews. So here we are on a Zoom again today, but it's been nonstop Zooming of interviewing. And it poses a little bit more of a challenge, because when you meet somebody and you're interviewing them, you're really trying to establish that connection, because you're trying to vet out, are they a good fit for the organization? Are they a good fit for the role? You know, how are they going to fit in with the culture? Some of that is very challenging to come across in an interview that's done via Zoom, because you're face-to-face with someone, but that connection is kind of missing. So it's had a tendency to have more than one interview or more than one screening. So HR might screen over the phone and then have a face-to-face Zoom and then meet on with the hiring managers. But it causes that angst of not really getting to be able to establish that rapport and that relationship right out of the gate. So our approach has been different, and same thing with where people are going to look for jobs. So Indeed is a key area that we advertise in, but then you've got all aspects of social media that the younger generation, the millennials, that they look for positions on Facebook. Most of us wouldn't be thinking, Facebook, I have to advertise on that, but it's true. You advertise on Facebook and many of the online ads that we can do, but it's a definite shift. And same thing with, we talked about, job fairs, virtual job fairs or drive-through job fairs. So we've really had to be creative in how we get individuals to connect with us that may not be just directly in the workplace.
Scott, how about you?
Yeah, I think, in fact, I changed jobs during COVID, and actually wasn't looking for a job, and just, someone reached out and that's how I ended up at Fiserv. But I think from the experience of the interviewee, it poses certain challenges. However, you just have to be able to really kind of read the facial expressions, and really kind of be able to dig deep into, if you're doing behavioral questions, to really kind of dig below, the first surface answer, and really help them kind of, especially when you're looking at entry level folks. I mean, they may not have nearly as much interviewing experience in general, so you almost have to kind of pull them through that process, and you can really tell folks that are hungry, as it were, and are just hyper engaged and excited. I mean, those are things that I look for. Whenever I'm talking to anybody about a role, it's what level of engagement do you have and excitement do you have about the job, and have you actually done some level of research about the company versus just showing up and not doing any preparation.
Yes, and so tied in with the remote work, we also have a very tight labor market right now. So I'm going to open this to any of the three of you who care to respond. What are you doing in that regard? Whether is it dealing with compensation, bonuses, networking? What are the opportunities there to deal with this really labor shortage?
I found that unless there is something related to the actual position, where, again, I go back to the skill sets tied to a particular industry, then you're now, shall we say, looking at a very smaller market that they can find somebody. And you're right, the market isn't as big as it used to be. But I find that that's a time that you want to add incentives to take and bring in that particular person that you're looking at as a potential candidate. You may have to pay a premium for that individual's background and hands-on abilities to take and deal with that industry.
Okay, anybody else want to add your comments before we move on to the next section?
I would agree. It's those incentives. It's the draw, it's the candidate draw. Many companies are offering sign-on bonuses. Not all companies can afford to do that, but they are offering sign-on bonuses. They're offering gift cards. There's a variety of incentives that are being offered. Employee referrals are really important, because if an employee is happy at the organization, they're more inclined to refer individuals. And when they know that it's a good place to work, they're really looking for that fit. And that's where the employee referrals have paid off. So if you have an employee referral program, there's an incentive in that regard for the employee that's referring someone, which is helpful. But it's a very tight market out there.
Okay, thank you.